that has been covered, and we're tracking just about every media outlet. That would be the American swimmers. Ryan Lochte and Jimmy Fegan could still face serious charges following the robbery scandal involving 4 U.S. swimmers. So Rio Civil Police Chief told ESPN yesterday that the investigation is continuing regarding what happened Sunday at that gas station. So the police held a press conference Thursday in Rio saying that the 4 lied about being robbed at gunpoint and that they vandalized a gas station bathroom and were confronted by security. The lawyer for Fegan says the swimmer will pay roughly $10,000 today, then leave Brazil. Fegan's teammates, Gunnar Benz and Jack Conger, left Brazil Thursday night after giving testimony to the police. Stephen A., what's your reaction to the latest on this?
Well, my reaction to the latest of it, believe it or not, is that, first of all, we departed from yesterday's show because after we did a segment on it, immediately following that, news came down, reported by ABC News, that Lochte had indeed fabricated the story, according to the folks, according to his teammates kept in custody by the Brazilian police. And so Lochte comes across as a flagrant liar and a straight-up punk because he skipped town. Not only did he commit the crime per se of you know, kicking in the door, doing what, you know, vandalizing, but then, you know, skipped out of the country, all right, left 2 of his boys back there. So he looks, I mean, talk about looking weak. This is a man that we need to hear what he has to say, but Lord, he looks bad in all of this. He embarrassed himself. He embarrassed his team. He embarrassed the United States of America. Assuming it's true, and we all believe at this juncture anyway that it is. But I bring that up because I must confess, when I heard that his teammate had to pay $10,800, I just said to myself, you know what, I'm thinking about all these problems going on in Brazil. I'm thinking about all the things that have been well chronicled, you know, monetary issues and beyond. And I just said to myself, okay, that it could come across as a fine, but that's pretty damn steep, you know. And I found myself wondering, you know, did you just sit up there and say what you needed to say to get the hell up out of there? Did they force you to say what they needed you to say just to get the hell up out of, just so you could get the hell up out of there? I don't know the answer to these questions. I guess we'll find out more once they all get stateside. But right now, I think we lean on the interpretation of Lochte being a liar that he appears to be and how shameful it is. It was an embarrassment and a disgrace to this country. And you know what? If indeed he did lie, he doesn't need to show his face. The only reason why Lochte should show his face is to categorically deny that he fabricated the story. If he indeed fabricated the story and put everybody through that, going on Twitter, you know, just exacerbating the issue and stretching the story to the astronomical proportions it has been stretched to, he doesn't need to show his face if indeed he fabricated this whole thing.
You know, here's Lochte's problem. From everything you hear out of his mouth, he's entitled. And look, what I'm about to say, I don't know him, but I'm just basing it on public statements he's made, stuff I've read and heard. He seems to have a pretty low IQ. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. He doesn't seem that smart. And a lot of times we sit here and praise athletes' intelligence. You hear Richard Sherman or Bennett or someone who seems to be interested in things and interested in the world. Or you sit down and talk with Kobe Bryant, for example, who never went to college but is worldly, he's been around the world a bunch of times.
Highly intelligent.
You can see when a guy has, whether or not he's been formally trained, you can see when a guy has a high IQ. And in this case, it looks like this guy Lochte is not one of those people. And in addition to that, is extremely entitled and therefore has no real sense of self and his kind of place in the world. And believes he's, I guess, more important than he is. And I think that's what got him in trouble. It doesn't seem like the brightest bulb.
It's not okay to go into somebody's business because the door isn't working and just break it open and vandalize.
Well, he appears to have lied. He appears to have lied and all of that. First of all, nobody's defending his actions.
Yeah.
There's no defense for it. But my goodness, how could you stretch it to these proportions and lie and turn it into an international incident? The 2016 Olympic Games this is going to be the #1 story that people remember for years to come. And the United States of America is associated with lies and shame because of this man.
And it's a shame that overshadows what they accomplished.
That overshadows everything. It overshadows everything. It doesn't erase everything because we recognize the individual athletes that have made us very, very proud, and we appreciate that. But I'm talking about in terms of what makes headlines. This is the #1 story.
You know, and by the way, in terms of like whatever legal ramifications, he does have his just desserts, Lochte, in the sense that he's now been publicly humiliated.
Yep.
He's Stephen A. You just said, I think correctly, it was shameful, cowardly, whatever else. And I'm talking about the level of his intelligence here.
Right.
And this is being discussed on a national level by a lot of people. Good luck with endorsements and everything going forward. That's just his ability to make a living.
How can you get an endorsement after this?
Right.
Not from this country.
But so
maybe from, I mean, if fraud is marketable, if phoniness is marketable, I mean, I don't know.
So his ability to make a living has been permanently, it would seem, compromised. But in addition to that, there's an ongoing public humiliation that, you know, you don't wish on anyone, but I guess it's his just desserts.
Yep.
Got it.
He did release a statement on Twitter this morning and essentially said, I can't read the whole thing, he should have been more careful and candid in how he described those events. So pretty much seems like he's admitting that he did lie. In a piece for The Undefeated, former NFL cornerback Dominique Foxworth pleads to Aaron Rodgers to add his voice to the Black Lives Matter protest. Currently, the expectation of athletes to take a stand on social issues falls only on black athletes, as if we're the only athletes with the responsibility for the advancement of society. I assume you agree with me when I say every person has an equal obligation to advance our society, black or white, celebrity or not, athlete or fan. So please, be the leader I believe you are. Be the first white superstar athlete to accept some of the burden black athletes are currently shouldering alone, and say Black Lives Matter. Stephen A., should Rodgers speak out more?
Yes, he should, but I think that where I disagree with the article, which I haven't read it in its entirety, but I saw those quotes, where I disagree with it somewhat is pinning it on Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
I think any white star in professional sports that has reach, that has cachet, that has the ability to galvanize folks to listen and hear what they have to say should be conscientious enough to speak up. You don't have to wax eloquently or attempt to about issues you're not familiar with. But I do think it's incumbent upon you to say something. I don't believe it's incumbent upon Aaron Rodgers to step forward and to say Black Lives Matter. I've been on, I took heat from Black Lives Matter because I said maybe there was a problem with your name because it should have said Black Lives Matter too. As opposed, but I do understand Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, my man Joe Madison for SiriusXM, and others, explained to me what that was or what that was all about, why the word "to" wasn't deemed necessary, and I appreciate them educating me on that. But the bottom line is this: I think that as black people, we have to accept something here. White folks are not black. And as a result, the level of sensitivity that we have towards certain issues, they may not have. Now, that doesn't mean they shouldn't speak out. That shouldn't mean that when there's injustices that are taking place, that we all shouldn't be a universal voice in our society. But at the same time, it amazes me how on so many occasions we as a black community expect and anticipate that those outside the black community are going to have more sensitivity towards our issues than as we should. It doesn't work that way. It would be nice if it were that way. It would be incredibly beneficial when you think about civil rights and civil rights legislation and the battle and the fight for civil rights, how it took place and how there were some white folks that stepped into the fray and assisted black folks in making sure that we ultimately were able to acquire those rights. The flip side to it is that as we've evolved as a society, as we've seen more and more people from all walks of life suffering and struggling the way that they do, the fact of the matter is that we would like folks to be sensitive to our plight, but we shouldn't anticipate and expect them to. And more importantly, we shouldn't expect anybody to help us more than we're willing to help ourselves. And so as a black community, I think it's incumbent upon us to recognize that while we want people out there to help and assist us in our goals in fighting off demons that continue to sift through our communities like viruses, it's incumbent upon us to do for ourselves, to do as much for ourselves as possible. So when we want assistance from somebody else, it's plausible that we may receive it because they're looking at us as an example to assist with and to follow, as opposed to us just screaming at them as to what they should be doing instead of focusing on what we should be doing for ourselves.
Yep, although it's incumbent upon everybody to speak out against injustice, I think, wherever they find it, particularly egregious injustice. And I think Foxworth's point, and I hope I'm representing him properly here, is that Rodgers in particular, as the best player in the world, as a guy who's shown a political orientation that suggests, or at least a social orientation, that suggests that he would be sensitive to this issue, who has shown intelligence. Foxworth's asking him to take the next step in terms of showing the courage and the kind of forward-thinking point of view that he would come out now and show sense and say the words Black Lives Matter. Now, and by the way, it would be nice, as an, to add to that, if it wasn't because all lives matter, because as you said, it's Black Lives Matter parenthetically too, because in this country it has not, oh, it's obvious Black Lives Matter. No, in this country it has been obvious most of the time that Black lives do not matter throughout the history of our country. Right.
That is accurate.
Here's my problem with it. Black Lives Matter as a slogan, as an idea, I like very much. Black Lives Matter as an organization and movement has now put out a political platform, which includes ideas that maybe someone like Aaron Rodgers or others, white or black, wouldn't be comfortable supporting, including the immediate release and retroactive decriminalization of prostitution and drug offenders, and their records should be expunged. Maybe not everyone's going to agree with that. Divestment from Israel, they point out as the example of the country.
That was one of them.
Right. I mean, this is a platform that the idea of Black Lives Matter is uncontroversial, or should be to any intelligent, evolved person. But these ideas, this platform, is not going to be so obvious and is going to be controversial. And so once Black Lives Matter presents a political platform, then using that slogan, which on its face is completely correct, is associated with a host of other ideas that maybe Aaron Rodgers or others wouldn't be comfortable supporting.
Those are fair points, but to bring it back home to Aaron Rodgers, I don't want to hear Aaron Rodgers. Let me take that back. I understand Aaron Rodgers' name coming up in Foxworth's column if you're piggybacking directly off of what has transpired in recent days in Milwaukee. Okay? The riots that broke out, burning the cars, some of the violence, et cetera, because a police officer shot, shot a black man. But let's keep in mind, the black man that was shot had a gun. We don't know all the details because we may find out that there's some transgression that took place we don't know. But from what we know, there was a black individual shot. The officer who shot him was black. What does Aaron Rodgers have to do with that? I'm just asking the question. We also got to take into account the fact that just an hour and a half away in the streets of Chicago, we still got a problem that's existing there. That's why we'll be there next week. That's why the Undefeated is going there next week, because there are shootings that have been taking place in Chicago at record numbers, which has alarmed all of us. We've got black folks saying the president needs to speak up and say more because he's a junior senator from that area. And we hadn't heard enough from him. In all likelihood, because Rahm Emanuel, his former chief of staff, is the mayor in Chicago right now. We don't know. We just know that we would like to hear more from him on what's been taking place in Chicago. What I'm saying is, in closing, is this. Once again, black, black victim, black police officer, Milwaukee. Black on black crime in Chicago. African-American president who we would like to hear more from on the issues in Chicago. Yes, it would be nice if white folks would join in and assist in any way we can, because this is America. Y'all do make up 66% of the population, and we would greatly appreciate any assistance that you conscientiously are willing to provide. However, in the end, it still comes down to what the black community is willing to do with and for the black community in order to move forward. And that ain't on Aaron Rodgers.
But although he should come on this show to discuss it with us, Stephen A.
I wouldn't
We
say
would
that.
love that.
Well, he don't need to. Listen, he could just come on the show because he's Aaron Rodgers. Period.
Yes, and as you alluded to, the Undefeated holding a town hall on Thursday in Chicago discussing athletes and social issues, and then we will be there
The next
on
morning.
Friday and also reacting and getting involved in all of it. So we're looking forward to that.